Robinson, and their daughter was going to Johnson with my sister. And I heard about a vacancy that was coming up in the high school. And so I applied for it. And I don't know what happened to get the job.
Mm-hmm. Now, did Phyllis graduate from Johnson?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And she was a teacher in the grades. Okay. First grade and fourth grade were the two that I remember that she had.
Now, did you have a steady boyfriend when you were going to college?
No.
No?
No.
So when was the first that you...
When I was in college, I went out on a few dates. I went to a few college dances, but I didn't have a steady boyfriend.
Maybe you should tell Roberta where you lived in relationship to the college.
Yeah. My first 2 years in college, I lived with my aunt and uncle way out on the Eastern Allen Road. He had a farm, and it went by Eastern Allen Park, and there was a road going out. At the end of the road was his farm. And when I went to go to college, when I went to go to school in the morning to classes, he used to take a truck, and he would take his milk up to the King Street Creamery there in Burlington. And so he'd have his truck loaded with milk cans, and I would ride with it. But I was so embarrassed to be taken to school in that he would come up North Avenue and then take that to North Street and Riverside Avenue and come up Mansfield Avenue, which was right close to the campus. And I'd make him stop, and I'd get out and walk across the campus. I didn't have him drive up close to the college.
Now, did he realize why you were doing that?
Yes. And he'd ha, ha, ha. He'd laugh about it. He thought it was the funniest thing
Now, how'd you get back at night?
Went back down street, took the bus way down to Eastern Allen Park, got out and walked. It was almost a mile at the end of the road where their home was. I did that for the first 2 years. Then Mr. Howe, that was Uncle Lorenzo's father and mother, they lived on Williams Street, which is that goes to Grand Hospital.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right over there, right through there. They had a beautiful home there, and after they died, Lorenzo and Evelyn moved up there, and so I moved up there with them. So the last 2 years, I could go out the front door and walk right up across the campus.
That was good.
To classes.
And so you stayed with them for the last 2 years?
I stayed with them all 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About getting from Belvedere, Cambridge, Jeff, to getting off the train and walking up.
Oh, yes. When I lived here in Jeffersonville on Sunday night, to get back to Burlington, go over to the station here, take the train, and it got down to the Union Station in Burlington around 9 o'clock at night, and I'd walk the whole length of Main Street up to where my aunt and uncle lived on William Street. You wouldn't do that today.
I was going to say, you didn't really have any fear back then of doing that.
No. And on Friday nights, Phyllis Stockwell was in college when I was. And her stepmother, wasn't it, that worked for
Guy Page.
Guy Page and his wife. So many Friday nights, they would be going up to their home in Waterville.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so Phyllis and I, I'd come to Jeff and she'd come to Waterville.
Mm-hmm.
And he was driving, Phyllis and I, and what was the lady's name?
Grandma Janet.
Yeah. She and Phyllis and I'd be in this great big Cadillac, open Cadillac. We'd be sitting in the back seat, and he was driving. And there were lots of railroad crossings at that time because the trains went back and forth. We'd come to a railroad crossing and stop. And he'd, all right on the left, and she, all right on the right, and we'd start. We did that at every crossing. And we'd get so tickled in the back. Phyllis and I would have a hard time.
I was going to say, how could you keep not to laugh?
I remember that so well.
The thing I remember about the cars that they had was they would have what they call now like jump seats. There would be seats that would come out of the front so that you could put two or more people. They called them jump seats.
Oh, yeah.
But I can remember as a kid just thinking, boy, that is the height of luxury, to have that. Yeah, that's amazing. So, how did you meet your first husband?
I was teaching in Milton, and I lived with the Robinsons, and Mr. Robinson was in charge of the power plant there. And my first husband was a lineman for the Public Electric Light Company. In fact, he was kind of the boss of the crew, and he used to come to Mrs. Robinson's to have lunch at noon. Not every day, but when he was down that way. And that's how I met him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, how long did you go with him before you got married?
Oh, probably 3 years.
Mm-hmm. You knew right off that he was the one, or?
Oh, I guess so. I had never really had many boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
I really hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was it about him that attracted you?
well, he was quite a charming sort of person.
Mm-hmm.
He really was.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked him right away.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got married, where did you live? Were you still teaching there in Milton?
Oh, no.
No.
No, from Milton I went and taught over at Brigham Academy.
Okay.
Just 1 year. I didn't like it there. And I think it was, I had 3 years in Milton and 1 year in Brigham Academy. It was right after I taught in Brigham Academy that I got married.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you lived there? Where did you live?
When we got married,
Mm-hmm.
St. Albans.
In St. Albans?
Always,
Okay.
yeah.
You always lived in St.
Mm-hmm.
Albans? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I was married for 8 years.
Okay. And how many children did you have?
I had Barbara.
Okay.
Barbara was born, what year? 46.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, so you were from Bakersfield. You went. When did you start teaching? After Bakersfield, where did you teach?
At the time of the war, I was teaching over here.
Mm-hmm.
I taught over here 11 years, but
Okay.
not all 11 years consecutively. I was gone a while, and then I came back.
Mm-hmm.
But when Barbara was 1 year old, I was back here living in Jeff,
Mm-hmm.
and I taught in
Mhm.
Cambridge High School.
Okay. What changes from when you were teaching for now? Do you have any idea what your salary was when you first started teaching?
In Milton, my salary the first year was $700, and I paid $4 a week for board.
Imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I don't remember what it was over here especially, but not very much more probably. Well, 40, 46, 47. I never reached, in all my years of teaching, I never reached $10,000.
Really?
I got $9,000 the last year of my teaching. I taught in Fairfax too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I taught in Essex Junction.
Now, when you were married, did you rent or did you buy a house or?
No, we rented.
You rented, always, you know. And was it is economically, with the both of you working and everything, was there times when, I mean, did the paychecks barely hit,
Just barely.
take
Just-
care of expenses
just
and so
about.
forth, so you weren't able to have an abundance of money?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
You drove? Did you drive?
No.
When did you learn how to drive?
When Barbara was what? When
In
you
high
got
school.
married and left?
No, high school.
High school.
It was the first that you drove.
Mhm.
And why did you just not have any desire?
I don't know why I never did. But when I bought a car and Barbara used to drive to school, you were what, in senior?
Junior and senior.
Junior and senior.
Mhm.
And after she left high school, then I really got myself going and took
Mhm.
that driver training course
Mm-hmm.
and learned to drive.
And you were how old at that time?
Let's say it's 1964. I graduated from high school, so how old would that have made you? You were born in 1912.
Yeah, 50s.
Late 50s.
Late
or-
50s.
I married Homer in '52, and it was after that I got my license.
It was after that you got your license?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I was.
I was going to say, it was about 1964, I think, when she
Uh-huh.
got it.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Okay, so you married Homer in '52.
Mhm.
Okay, and then you moved up
We lived
on the farm. Okay.
all the rest of my life
Right.
until I moved over here.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Stop. Here we go. So you've already told me your first automobile when you bought your car. You bought your first car. You bought it. Who was the first president that you remember? Probably Roosevelt. Would it be Roosevelt?
Yeah,
Would it be Roosevelt?
or Eisenhower.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And did you have a favorite? Or is that not politically correct?
I don't know that I had a favorite question. I think I thought Eisenhower did a wonderful,
Okay.
because he was in the war too,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
all. But
Mhm.
and Reagan, I liked Ron Reagan very much.
Telephone. Do you remember the first telephone? Your first the first telephone that?
When I went on to the farm, I don't believe I had a telephone. Well, of course, my aunt and uncle in Burlington had a phone,
Mhm.
of course. But over on the farm, we had a phone. We had 8 parties on that line, and 4 of them we heard the rings. And you know what everybody did? They listened in all the time. You could barely ever go to your and pick up the receiver, and there'd be somebody talking.
So if you needed to use the phone, you picked up the receiver and someone's talking, did you wait or did you ask?
No, we used to ask them if
that
they
you could
wouldn't
use them?
please hang up, because you wanted to, you'd usually say it's an emergency or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. Out in the country like that, that's the way they got all their news. I shouldn't say this, but Homer's mother sat and listened on that phone often.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard, that there were certain people, I think, in town that we used to hear that were, noted for, for doing that. Yeah. Do you remember when you took your first airplane ride?
Mm-hmm. I went to Florida with my mother. Phyllis and Harold were living in Florida. And we took the plane from Burlington, and we didn't have to change. We went to Tampa, and they met us there. What year would that have been, Barbara?
I'm trying to think, because I know you and Gramp went when Katie was a baby, and she's 35. So I'm guessing it was probably 37 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
When you would take her down and leave her
Mhm.
for the winter with Aunt Phyllis.
When growing up, did you have a radio when you were as a child growing up in Belvedere? Did you have a radio?
Why, no.
No. Okay. No.
We didn't have telephone, we didn't have radio. My grandfather, Thomas, got a radio. I remember you had to go over and put on the earphone
Oh, my.
on your head. And it was kind of a noisy thing. I can't remember what they got on, but I do remember when I lived in the valley with Homer, we were invited to go down to